China Muslim crackdown reaches abroad. Authorities threaten family members, use paperwork to pressure Uighurs overseas. By Eva Dou. Saturday and Sunday, September 1st and 2nd, 2018 edition of the Wall Street Journal. Beijing. China's mass detention campaign against Muslims in its far west is targeting people who have moved overseas, with Chinese authorities investigating whether members of the Uighur ethnic group are involved in any anti-government activities. For more than a year, security officials have told Uighurs living abroad to provide documentation of their overseas activities and to spy and inform on other Uighurs, most of whom are Muslim, according to interviews and chat records interviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Other expatriate Uighurs have had their passport renewals denied and instead were offered one-way travel documents to try to force them to return to China. In many cases, these Uighurs said authorities are leveraging the government's detention program, threatening to throw family members still in Zhejiang into the centers, where the U.S. State Department estimates hundreds of thousands have been detained. Namtullah Najmuddin, a 35-year-old computer engineering student in Norway, said his father called in May of 2017 telling him to expect to hear from the local police. The man identified himself as a police officer, soon followed up, asking for pictures of his passport and Norwegian identification documents. "Those are my private things. I can't give it to you," Mr. Najmuddin wrote back on May 18th last year, according to chat logs reviewed by the Journal. "You'd better think carefully about it," was the reply. In November, Mr. Najmuddin said his father, a 59-year-old cotton farmer without any record of prior arrests or political involvement, was taken to a detention center. Uighurs living overseas are a focus of one of China's largest mass incarcerations in decades. Beijing is concerned that radical Islamic militants are driving a long-running, sporadically violent Uighur separatist movement in Zhejiang, China's sprawling northwest region. The government sees Uighurs living overseas as potential agents of radicalization. China's foreign ministry referred questions about targeting Uighurs overseas to other ministries. China's Ministry of Public Security and State Council Information Office didn't respond to requests to comment, and the Ministry of State Security, the top intelligence agency, wasn't reachable to comment. Zhejiang police referred questions to the Zhejiang government, which didn't reply. Chinese officials had previously denied the existence of detention camps, saying they are vocational training centers mainly for petty criminal offenders. 17 Uighurs living in the U.S., Britain, Germany, Australia, as well as Norway and other countries told the Journal that they have been pressured by Chinese police and officials. "Do you carry out illegal activities or not?" a state security agent asked Abdurrahman Mameh, a 30-year-old Chinese Uighur working as a tour guide in Istanbul, according to a voice message exchanged through Chinese chat app WeChat in March of 2017. "How can I know if you do not come back?" Mr. Mameh said the man didn't explain why he needed to return. In one voice message, the agent said, "Your family members are in big trouble if you don't come back." A man who answered one phone number used last year to contact Mr. Mameh said he was just a community worker and said not to call again. Mr. Najmuddin's chat logs show that a man who contacted him identified himself as a police officer. A woman at a police station in Zhejiang's Yuli County, where Mr. Najmuddin's father lived, confirmed there was an officer by that name, and his work responsibilities included contacting overseas Uighurs. Reached on mobile phone, that police officer said he couldn't answer our questions, adding, "Our job is secret." Uighurs see Zhejiang as their homeland. In recent decades, many Uighurs have gone abroad mainly for better work prospects. Some have joined militant movements, with Uighurs turning up in jihadist groups from Afghanistan to Syria. An uptick in knifing and homemade bomb attacks blamed on Uighur militants happened in China in 2014. The response has been to swarm Zhejiang with security, swathing the region in a high-tech surveillance network, and, in the past 2 years, building the detention centers that inmates say mix abuse with patriotic indoctrination. While experts say the threat from a small number of extremists is real, Beijing's reaction is drawing censure from abroad and warnings that the approach risks alienating many Uighurs generally supportive of the government. Rayla Abulaisha, a naturalized British citizen, said her 65-year-old mother was taken to a detention center last summer, even though she had sent her mother the requested proof of her studies in the UK. She said her mother, Mrs. Pita, was a retired engineer for a state-owned petroleum chemical company with no criminal record. Where has she been taken? I have no idea, she said. Everyone is too scared to communicate with me. Anur a naturalized Australian citizen and activist, said her 71-year-old mother, Saidia A, no longer has valid identification in Australia after the Chinese consulate in Sydney rejected her passport renewal request in January. Ms. A was issued instead a one-time travel permit back to China to apply for a new passport there. Ms. A said her mother had decided not to return to Zhejiang, fearing she wouldn't be allowed back overseas. A staffer at the Chinese consulate in Sydney said Friday that Uighurs could renew passports as usual, but that based on, quote, domestic requirements or individual, quote, problems, some might be issued travel documents instead. Mr. Mehmet, the tour guide in Turkey, said he met with the same situation at the Chinese consulate in Istanbul last year when he tried to get a passport for his newborn second son, Fuad. In 2015, Mr. Mehmet had secured a passport at the consulate for his elder son without incident. He said, this time, amid the detention campaign, his younger son was denied a passport but given a one-way travel document valid for 3 months. That has expired, and so Fuad has no legal existence in Turkey. Mr. Mehmet said he can't even go to the hospital. And also, Kirsten Zhang contributed to the article. I read this article early this morning when I was getting ready to shower in Davenport, and it really seemed quite appropriate, seeing as how this is, if you could all think back to September 12th, afternoon of September 11th and September 12th in 2001, when a lot of our compatriots, a lot of our fellow countrymen and women started to show their fear and misunderstanding of some of our other patriots, some of our citizens and resident aliens, and a few people even died during that, unfortunately, and it helped to show where we are at as a people, as a culture. And if you wanted to change a few words in this article, you change it to American crackdown reaches abroad, and it didn't say it, but the people living in Zhejiang are citizens of China. So let's just say that America was to require that expatriates was to require that American citizens living abroad that came from a certain part of the country that had a certain faith were no longer allowed to live where they are, and were required by the country, were given a one-way travel document. Get your butt back here document. How would that go? Let's just say that somebody were to say, you'd better think carefully about it in reply to you, or If somebody asked them about that, they would say our job is secret. And people that have no political involvement or criminal record were detained because their family members decided not to comply. Just throw that around in your noggin, and for what it's worth. Thank you.